Hey there everybody, it's Mike DiLisio with another solo mode review. Today, I'm going to be reviewing Pandorum from Cosmodrome Games. Pandorum is a game set in space where you are trying to harvest materials, you're trying to build bases and modules on this planet, and you are trying to do so in a way that is going to make you the most profitable. Money is points, so to speak. And in this game, you're going to be playing against a virtual opponent called Maximus. So let's head on over to the table, take a quick look at how the solo mode changes things up, then we'll come back over here and I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, here we have a partial setup for the solo game of Pandorum. First thing I want to talk about are the components. What's added to the game for the solo mode, which they call Maximus. Your virtual opponent is Maximus. And the only things that really get added is this small deck of solo cards and this solo pad, as they call it, which during setup, what normally is going to happen is you'll have your own, I'm going to scoot these over a little bit, you'll have your own harvester here, and you would randomly select one of these like in a regular game. These all have a symbol on the back, and so let's say you took one randomly in a regular game, you're going to place it like this over the top of your board so that no one knows what you're trying to go for, but in the solo game it doesn't matter. So you can say, okay, I know that I'm going to get extra for those. You place that above your harvester as normal. The solo game, you take another one for Maximus and you put the solo pad on top of it, okay? So it kind of slots in there like this. So this is the main difference as far as components, what's added or removed. Really, you just add that pad and you add this small deck of cards, and that's the only difference as far as setup, with one minor change. And we'll just talk about this as being a way that the gameplay changes as well. The market normally is going to have 4 different types of cards at any time. Now, in the solo game, there has to be at least 5 cards. That's a difference in the solo game as opposed to the regular game. And so I've got 5 different cards up there. And so that's one small difference, 5 instead of 4. Okay, how does the gameplay itself change? Well, for you as a player, it doesn't particularly change very much. You still are either going to be taking cards or you're going to be moving the harvester and potentially building. I'm not going to go into a heavy rules overview. If you want to get a better idea of how the game itself actually plays, take a look at Tom's review. I will post a link to that in the description of this video. But let's say, for example, I am moving my harvester in a straight line as always, and I'm going to play cards to be able to put out one of my little bases there, okay? Then what's going to happen is Maximus is going to take their turn, and they're going to move in a straight line as close to you as they can. So they'd move right here, and they're going to place a building, okay? And they're going to do it on this solo pad. And they're going to go from right to left, and there's little arrows that are going to denote what's what. So takes one of its buildings, places it right there. Then what it's going to do is it's going to look at its priority list here. You've got the different types of cards denoted by color, and it's going to take those from the market from left to right. So it first wants the blue cards, okay? So when you're building a base like this, it's going to get 1 card. If it's building a larger one, a module, it's going to take 2 cards from the market. And the number of bases and modules is based off of a game difficulty. So what I've got it on right now is like a medium difficulty they call Captain, where you've got 6 bases and 16 modules. You can make it more difficult by putting more bases out there, because obviously the more bases on the board, the more cards they're going to take from the market, which is also going to be a way that they're going to score some points. So they would now be looking for a blue card. Okay, so they take this blue card and they place it beneath their harvester here. Okay, so you've got the 3 spots. Now, in a multiplayer game, these are going to give the players different abilities, powers, etc. In the solo game, it works a little bit differently. What you're going to be doing is placing them from left to right and then back in kind of like a circle or a cycle. And so as Maximus is getting more and more cards, the only one that's really going to matter for points is going to be right here in the cargo bay, which is going to work as per normal. They're going to continue to get cards throughout the game. They're going to continue to go into the different spots. And then at the end of the game, you're going to take from the cargo bay and you are going to give them points as if they were a normal player. The other way they're going to make points is by building their bases and modules. They would score the correct number of quam, which is basically the points or the income for the game, as if they were a regular player. And that's really how the game plays out. You're going to continue to take your turns, either getting cards from the market, moving your harvester and building buildings, and the AI is going to follow suit. Now, how does the solo deck of cards come into play? Well, these really come into play if there ever is a place of movement where you're not on a straight line with Maximus. So if somehow you had been able to move around so that you were on a different line and they couldn't reach you in a straight line, what you're going to do is look at this card that's going to help you determine how they can move closest to you on a straight line. And so you're first going to be looking at this direction here, and if that doesn't work, then you're going to look at the top of the card, and then you're going to look at the bottom of the card until you get Maximus in a straight line with you. And that's the main difference as far as setup and gameplay goes. Let's take a look at my final thoughts. Okay, hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea of how the solo mode for Pandorum changes things up from the traditional game. First thing I want to do is talk about the overall solo experience. And so there are three things I tend to look for with the solo experience. The first being win conditions. Does this have a clear win-loss condition, or is it a beat your high score variant? Well, in this game, Maximus is a opponent, a very clear opponent. They're going to be gaining points. They're going to be gaining money throughout the game, and you have to do better. You have to be able to make more money, build more efficiently, do more to get you in a position to have a higher score. So a clear win-loss condition, and that's good. I mean, that's always going to be my preference as a solo gamer, is to have a clear win-loss condition, and there is one here. No issues at all there. Secondly, setup and teardown. The setup and teardown is really not arduous. I mean, you don't even have to put out the little cardboard construct volcanoes if you don't want to. They do help kind of visualize the idea that that's an unpassable spot. So, and it gives a nice 3D presence to the board, but that's really the most time-consuming part of the setup. There's not a whole lot other than you do have to set up the solo board. You have to set up Maximus's solo pad with putting out a couple of different colors of bases and modules, but that's not a huge issue. The setup and teardown is fine. I mean, it's a quick game, maybe too quick for the amount that you're taking time to set it up and tear it down, but not a whole lot, okay? Rules. This is, I have a bit of an issue with the rules. I feel like there's a lot of ambiguity. Now, I don't know if this is perhaps a translation issue. I don't know if maybe this was translated from another language into English, but there were some times where I was very unclear with what was being asked of me as a player. I felt like there were a lot of times where there were edge cases, or this might happen or that might happen, and you're supposed to use that solo deck to determine how to best deal with that. And there's changing priorities and things along those lines. And in a game, a solo game, where you've got all of these different priority things that you're looking for, whether they're cards or where you're going to move their harvester, that should be really crystal clear. You as a player should not really have to struggle to determine, am I putting this harvester in the right place? Am I doing the right thing here? Because it makes you feel like any win you get might be compromised and any loss you get might be compromised. If I'm not doing things the way I'm supposed to as a player, how do I know if my victory or defeat is a valid one? And so I really wish the rules were a bit clearer with how to handle these ambiguities, especially of movement, somewhat with the cards. There were a couple of occasions in the rules where it says to remove from left to right. Well, looking at the components, it's clear that it's the other way around, that you're removing from right to left. But it's saying left to right. I can't wrap around my brain a way to follow the rules as written with the components I have. And so that made me feel like if that's ambiguous and potentially just straight out wrong, what else is ambiguous and perhaps straight out wrong? That's a significant issue. Okay, so overall, what do I think of Pandorum as a solo game? I think that there's a germ of an idea in here that's interesting. However, I really do feel like this is a game where a solo mode was kind of shoehorned in. This does not feel like a game that was designed with a solo mode in mind. I don't know the etymology of it. I don't know if it was added as a stretch goal, if this was through the Kickstarter or whatever the case may be. I don't know if this was put in there from the beginning of the design iteration process. But to me, it does not feel cohesive. It doesn't feel like a natural extension of the multiplayer game. It feels like something that was kind of retrofitted in to have a potential of a solo variant. And it just did not work well for me. Too many ambiguities, too many times where I was unsure what I was doing was what I should be doing. I was paying almost more attention, probably not almost, I was paying more attention to administering the solo AI than I was to taking my own turns, and that's never a good thing. And I also felt like there was a tremendous amount of randomness. Now, I don't have an issue with randomness in general, but I felt like the scoring that was happening was almost completely random, and that there was really no way to feel clever about setting up the opponent to do something poor. I just felt like they were going to move, they were going to build, they were going to take a card that was going to help them score. Now, there is that priority card draw where later in the game they're going to be going for different types of cards that could potentially score them more points because some cards will score you better at the beginning of the game versus the end. And so I appreciate that there is at least some way to show that there's thoughtfulness behind how the AI scores points, but it still left me feeling like it was far too random for my taste. So, all that being said, this was not really a solo game for me. I felt like it was maybe not really supposed to be there from the beginning, just kind of put in at the end. And so overall, I give the Pandorum solo variant a 5 out of 10. It's playable, but it really didn't feel like it was satisfying. Thank you so much for your time as always, and have a great day.